22. While you're turning there, I'll go ahead and try to let you know ahead of time. I'm trying to get a guest to come up here and preach February 20, not 18th. So there's a young man at the BCM, Jimmy, his name. He's been the gentleman that I've been in contact with to take our van for the BCM trip in Colorado. Anyways, I've invited him to come preach. This would be like his third time to preach. So he says he wants to do it, and that's the plan, February 18th. I want to ask y'all again to be a blessing to a young man, an opportunity to preach. I'll be here. And so just encourage him. I'm not saying don't be truthful. But I'd hate for the guy to walk away and say, I'm never preaching again. I don't want him to think that way. But that's kind of, again, just trying to build a relationship a little bit with the BCM. And so I have a young man who's going to come out here and preach. And I told him what we were doing. And he's given the passages between Leviticus 13 to 24 or Matthew 26 to 28. So I told him he has the option. I'm pretty sure it'll be Matthew, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm going to try to steer him that way. But anyways, more on that. Again, just be a blessing. I don't expect, Maguire just to have a bunch of college students. But you know what? We can still help a young man serve the Lord and just to help him. They say, it's funny. If you can just change a direction for somebody, just even a little bit, just an inch. Well, in 5 years, that inch ended up being, maybe a mile apart from where they were going. If you just change a little bit in the beginning and they go that way, who knows which way you may have helped them in the long run, So, but anyways, more on that on the future. So, watch you see me preaching and be like, didn't work. Matthew 22. Matthew 22. As I said before, you have been reading judgment. You have been reading judgment. You have in Matthew 21, you get Jesus comes, right? It always blows my mind that when Jesus enters into Jerusalem, they're calling him Hosanna, they're calling him the Son of David, and he's coming in like a king. And these same people who are praising his name are going to be the same ones that yell out, crucify. It blows my mind that happens in a matter of just a week. But Jesus gets to the temple, and as you've been reading, if you go back and, if you're looking at 22, just go back on the previous parable, the parable of the vineyard owner. What happens? The owner sends servants to collect the harvest. What do? Beat them. Oh, well, they'll respect my son. They kill his son. Again, Jesus is saying, that's you. You're rejecting. And then we get to Matthew 22. Very similar in his message here. Read with me here in verse 1 of chapter 22. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in parables. The kingdom of heaven is like a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. Just think of the king as God. Parables have characters. Characters represent something. The king is God. Verse 3. He sent his servants to summon those invited to the banquet, but they didn't want to come. Again, he sent out other servants and said, tell those who are invited, see, I've prepared my dinner, my oxen, fattened cattle have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet. So he's already sent one invitation. And what is the response? It says, they didn't want to come. Verse 3, I'm busy. I got things to do. And how does the king, again, this is for his son. I mean, this picture, royalty, it is expected of the people to respect the heir of the king. This is your future king who is going to protect you and guide you and guard you from the enemy. It's like, respect my son. I am throwing this wedding for him, and you all are welcome to participate. And it's expected. So he sends out an invitation. Verse 3, they weren't interested. So verse 4, we see the king showing compassion the first time. Again, verse 4. Again, he sent out other servants. Tell those who are invited, I've prepared my dinner, my oxen, fattened calf have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet. So the second invitation, he's even telling them good news. Just come. It's going to be an amazing experience. In you come. Verse 5. But they paid no attention and went away, one to his own farm and another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. One to his own farm. So you have the rural people who were sent out invitations. I'm busy. I got a farm. I got things to do. Cattle don't feed themselves. I had a guy tell me that once. Why he doesn't have any. He can't come to church ever. Someone's got to feed those cows. It's okay if they graze a little bit. It's not the end of the world if they graze just for a little bit. But again, I'm busy. I got work to do. Family depends on it. Hey, at the end of the day, you're going to do what you want. Then you get the other one. Prepare, it says, and another to his business. More urban, city life, right? Your trade market that you have out there on the streets. Again, I got business. Time is money. Time is money. I'm missing out on deals. And then verse 6, it gets worse. The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. Again, Jesus implying prophets were sent to you. How did you treat the prophets? Number one, you either killed my prophets. Number two, you just ignored them. Too busy with your everyday life. Want nothing to do with God. Something that I have called the ant syndrome. You've heard me reference it before. Ants, they just get up in the morning. They go out and they work. Dark. It gets nighttime. They go back in the little ant hill. And they stay there till daytime. And they go and repeat. And that's what people do. Without a thought to God. That's the ant syndrome. Verse 7. The king was enraged, and he sent out his troops, killed those murderers, and burned down their city. Sometimes it always baffles me that we have cities completely reject God. And yet sometimes I think we send missionaries out to cities thinking, well, I'm called to, I'm there because I'm called. And there's no response. It's like, Jesus has said, if that town rejects you, wipe your dust off your feet, move on. Not all towns and cities are going to respond to the gospel. They're not. You need to discern that. It says here that he burns them down. Let's go to his next group of people, verse 8. Then he told his servants, the banquet is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. That's a thought for itself. Those who were invited, those who were privileged to get first invitations, those who know me the best, those who know my customs, those who know how I respond, are no longer worthy to be in my presence because they have rejected me. I think it's one of the worst things you can ever hear from God. You are not worthy. I want no part of you. Again, fearful words. But let's keep going. Verse 9. Go then to where the roads exit the city and invite everyone you find to the banquet. We're spreading the seed now. The king is calling an invitation to everyone. I am throwing a wedding for my son, and everyone is welcome. Except for the buffoons who had first knowledge, first privilege. They are rejected. Everyone now has an invitation. Verse 10. So those servants went out on the roads, gathered everyone they found, both evil and good. That is an important comment right there. The servants are going out to the world, inviting everyone who is both good and evil to the banquet. Because not everyone that goes to the banquet is good. We need to understand who's at the banquet. It says the wedding banquet was filled with guests. When the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who was not dressed for a wedding. So he said to him, friend, how did you get in here without wedding? The man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants, tie him up, hand and foot, and throw him into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And that whole parable is explained in one line in verse 14. The whole parable is explained with just one comment he makes. For many are invited, but few are chosen. That is the whole point of the parable. Now, going back real quick to the banquet, to those that have filled up, right? You have in verse 11 or verse 10. The wedding banquet was filled with guests. And they went out to get both good and bad. So don't think of the banquet, don't think of those who are actually at the banquet are righteous believers. That's not what's happening here. Because you have someone here, this man, verse 11, he came and saw a man who was not dressed for a wedding. Again, here's a man who responded to the invite. He responded, sure, I'm going to come. Yeah, I'll take a free meal any day. He responds, how did you get in here without wedding clothes? And it says the man was speechless. I think it's important to not take that speechless part as, oh, I didn't know. The point of the man was speechless is that he knew it and got caught. And he has no reply. He is busted. And what does the king do? Tie him up, hand and foot, and throw him out. So the point here is that you have a man who came to the wedding banquet, and he had this view of the king. Look, I know this is the custom. I know this is what they want, but the king should just be lucky I'm here. The king should just be happy that I'm even here for his son and for taking upon the food. It's more of a, Tell me, what was his perception of the king? It was wrong. He had a wrong perception of the king. Even though he was at the banquet, even though he responded to the invitation, he was wrong about the king. And what does the king do? He ties him up hand and foot. In other words, you're not going to break free. You're not going to come back in. I'm kicking you out of the banquet and you're never coming back. He's judging him right there. And that is the message that Jesus is saying here. Jesus has invited the world. So many people. The world is given an invitation to respond appropriately to the gospel. That God is a holy God. You need your sins forgiven. And great news, my son has forgiven your sins. By the works of the cross, my son is forgiving. The blood shed that should have been you has been done for you. What a beautiful invitation. What a wonderful news. I mean, we ought to be rejoicing in that. And that's the message to the world. Unfortunately, you get the first group of people. They're too busy with life. They're too busy with life. And just as another parable, Jesus says, and I don't think we're going to get to it until Luke, but as he says, you fool, your life is required of you this day, to the man that was building his assets. Your life is required of you. You got people that just fill their lives up with mundane things, temporary things. I tell you, what we do here together is not out in the world. We gather and celebrate eternal life in Jesus. There's nothing like that in the world. Nothing. We look at these temporary things between politics or money or whatever, and we understand they are temporary, and in time they will go away. We look at those in power and authority saying, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, you will bow the knee to Jesus, and you will have to give an account of everything you have done. You think you get away with whatever you think you have. But let me tell you, Jesus is not fooled by anyone. And that goes from the presidency to the local authority to our very own lives. We have a Jesus who will not be brought. You cannot plead with him. You cannot beg with him. He knows everything. You get the one group of people that just live life without it. Then you get the one group of people that are just hostile to God. They look at God's laws and say, you stop my fun. And what do you do when someone you don't like, you get rid of them? Either forcibly you remove them, you hurt them, or you just get away from them. That's the next group. And for this case, in the case of Jesus, these are the Jewish leaders at the temple. They, as you read, they're doing their best to trap Jesus. I love, when you read in 22, and I hope you have, you keep reading, I love his God and Caesar. I love whose inscription is this? Caesar's. Give the things to Caesars that are Caesar's and give the things to God. And what a beautiful comment that is, right? I mean, they're trying to trap him. They hate taxes. Jewish leaders and Jews hate Rome. It's like, let's bust him right here. And Jesus gives the perfect answer to a trap. Perfect answer. He can't out-comment Jesus. It's a beautiful picture. But this last group of people that he talks about, this group here, this man who had the wrong perception of who the king is, came to the banquet. He was the one. It seemed like the king directly addressed him personally. This man, like, can you imagine? I mean, he is caught. I mean, this man was thinking, I'm here, you should be great. Be happy that I'm here. And then he gets interrogated by the king. What a frightening moment. You know, can you imagine that moment that you was like, I was wrong. And it's too late. It's too late. We talked about in Sunday school today. What's most important to you? Knowing the true God or being comfortable? Knowing the true God or being comfortable? That's a great question. I mean, goodness, you read in Exodus where they killed their own people because they worshiped a golden calf. They killed them. Grinded up the dust, made them drink it. And then it says God inflicts a plague upon them. In fact, God is so angry that he could not set up the tent of meeting in the camp. He had to take the tent of meeting outside the camp because he says, I can't be with you. If I'm with you, I'm going to kill you. Again, does that make you uncomfortable? But you need to know if you want to live. You need to know the true Jesus if you want to live. But it's in our hearts to get away from uncomfortable conversations. It goes against that. I don't like this. It makes me feel ill. It makes me feel like I like to do what I want to do and you're stopping it. That's what makes ministry so hard more than anything else. We're talking about sinful desires. The world does not care. The world says it is within your right to pursue what makes you happy as long as you don't hurt anybody else. That's what the world says. But that's not what Jesus says. You must submit to him in word, in deed, in thought, everything. And if you don't, we will be held accountable. This is the true gospel. The last thing I want anybody at Maguire, the last thing I want my children to experience is that they have gotten a wrong perception of the king who is going to judge them. That's the worst thing I can do. That's the worst thing you can do as a parent, as a spouse, is to mislead your family away from the true gospel. If you love them, you will tell them the truth. You will not be mean about it. You will not be arrogant. I mean, you could have a conversation with this guy. He says, dude, the king is around the corner. He is not going to like what you're doing. I promise you, man. You've got to get out here. I have a spare over here. Come over here. Put it on. I mean, it's like, I got to tell you the truth, but I love you. I'm trying to win you. Most likely the guy will be like, man, whatever. Give me that fried shrimp over there. And unfortunately, this is just the bottom line there in verse 14 as he just concludes it. Many are invited, but only few are going to respond. That's just a hard, cold reality of ministry and sharing the gospel. All the reasons you just heard, you want nothing to do with Jesus, you hear it every day. You're busy, got things to do, or I don't like it. I love my fun. I love sin. I love what's good. I want to do what's right in my own eyes, not what he says. His ways are just regulating and ruining fun, whatever. And you got those that I worry about more in church, those that have the wrong perception. It's as if they're like, you should be grateful that I'm here at Maguire. Man, such an awful, awful, wrong perception. Each and every one of us here are to serve Jesus. Each and every one of us have to give an account to Jesus. You can't point your finger at me. You can't. You can't. You are responsible for your beliefs and choices that you make. I'm doing my best for you to see who He is. That we're all going to have to be confronted with. Please, please, have a sense of urgency. Be okay with uncomfortable. It's going to happen. We're all going to feel it. Better to be uncomfortable now than later. Right? Have those conversations with your spouse, with your children. Give them the truth. Don't let them walk into the judgment seat with the wrong perception of who God is. Don't let them do it. Don't let them do it. You can't make them, as Jesus makes it clear, you can't make anybody be something they don't want to be. You can't. But you love them. You want them to stand with a true understanding He is King, you are serving. Know His expectations, His character. Know that, and you'll respond in submission and humble gratitude. Let's pray. Lord, Heavenly Father, as we read your word, Lord, what sombering words that Jesus has spoken. And Lord, I can't help but fear, if I was there 2,000 years ago, would I believe? A mortal man standing in front of me making these comments and statements, would I believe? I don't know. I don't trust myself. I'd be too much of a skeptic. But yet, Lord, here we are in 2024, 2,000 years later, reading your word. Lord, I pray for each and every one of us to believe in your word. Lord, that we are in this together. Lord, that each and every one of us will stand before you on judgment. Lord, may we love each other so much that we help and try to win each other in deed, in compassion, and in truth. We have to stand before you. How great would it be for the entire Maguire Baptist Church to worship you in heaven together? It's not likely, as you have said. Lord, may we love you. May we love each other. May we worship the true King. Lord, thank you so much again for your words. Again, we are a privileged people that we can read your word every day. Lord, thank you so much. Praise you for your Son. So as we end